What's this? A letter for me.
Welcome to another episode of Remember the Great Sports Through the Mail Thursdays. Today I'm going to go through 3 envelopes that I just recently got back, so we're just going to jump right into this. And the first one is postmarked from North Carolina, and the return is from former New York Mets legend Ron Hodges on 1, 2, a third 81 Topps, and a 1985 Topps. So Ron Hodges, if you're a New York Mets fan, you definitely know who this guy is. Hodges is one of those rare players that was drafted and played his entire career with one franchise. He spent his entire 12-year career in the major leagues with the New York Mets. So let me tell you more about Ron Hodges. Hodges was originally drafted by the Orioles and the Royals and the Braves, but chose not to sign with any of those teams. Eventually, the Mets selected him in the second round of the 1972 secondary phase of the amateur draft, and he chose to sign. He spent 1 year in the minors with the Mets, and during just his second professional season, Hodges was promoted to the major league roster when injuries afflicted the Mets' other catchers, Jerry Grote and Duffy Dyer. He made his major league debut on June 13, 1973, catching the Met, Tom Seaver. So, I mean, could you imagine your first day called up to the major and they said, oh, by the way, Tom Seaver's pitching to you. 4 days later, he got his first career home run off of San Diego Padres' Bill Grief. Hodges stayed with the Mets for the remainder of the season, batting .260 with 18 runs batted in and just 1 home run. He was on the Mets postseason roster in 1973 and played in 1 game of the '73 World Series. Hodges would remain basically the backup catcher with the Mets all the way through the 1984 season, and he would appear in just over 660 games, have over 1,426 at-bats with a career batting average of .240. So, again, like I said, if you're a Mets fan, you definitely know who this guy is. I mean, he played his entire career with the Mets. You know, he was a backup catcher primarily his entire career, but, you know, with a left-handed bat that was also used off the bench. So we'll move on to the next one, and I will introduce that next player to you. All right, so this next one, if you're a Yankees fan, you're going to know this individual's son, most definitely. But this is former catcher, journeyman Steve Swisher on 1, 2 as a Cub, a third is a Padre, 83 Topps, and a fourth is a coach, and I just so happen to have that single in my minor league box. I don't have the set, but I just happen to have that card. So we got 404 from Steve Swisher. So let me tell you about his playing career and his managerial career in baseball. Swisher attended high school in West Virginia, then later attended college at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. The Chicago White Sox drafted Swisher in the first round, 21st overall in the 1973 draft. He would only spend 1 season in the White Sox organization in AA and AAA before he was traded across town to the rival Chicago Cubs. And this was actually how Ron Santo became a Chicago White Sox player towards the end of his career. Swisher was part of that trade. Well, the Cubs didn't waste a whole lot of time with Swisher in the minor leagues, and he only appeared in 52 games in AAA for the Cubs before they called him up to the major leagues during the 1974 season in June. He appeared in 90 games, batting .214 for the Cubs his first season in the majors. Well, the next year he would appear in a backup role. I don't want to say backup, but he appeared in 93 games for the Cubs at the major league level, but also spent a little time in AAA. Well, the following year, he actually would primarily be the full-time catcher for the Cubs in 1976, appearing in 109 games and actually making his one and only All-Star appearance in the 1976 All-Star game. In 1977, he would again be relegated to just 74 games, kind of a backup role with the Cubs. And after the 76 season, the Chicago Cubs would then trade him to the St. Louis Cardinals for Hector Cruz and Dave Rader. Well, he would spend the next 3 seasons primarily as a backup catcher for the Cardinals. And after the 1980 season, he would be traded in a big trade to the San Diego Padres. Yeah, the trade to the Padres with the Cardinals, he was traded along with 6 other players to the Padres, for Raleigh Fingers, Bob Shirley, and Gene Tennis. Obviously, the Cardinals flipped Raleigh Fingers and sent him packing to the Brewers, which I don't know why they did that, to be honest with you, but it happened. So after his time with the Cardinals, he then finished out the 81 and 1982 seasons basically as a primary backup catcher. After the 82 season, the Padres let him go, and he spent one more year in AAA for the Braves before he hung up the cleats as a player. Well, almost right after he retired that season, he started out in Class A coaching the Waterloo Indians in 1985 and 86. He then moved up to AA and AAA within the Cleveland Indians organization through 1988, coaching the Buffalo Bisons, Williamsport Bills, and the Colorado Springs Sky Sox. After his time at the Indians, Swisher moved to the New York Mets organization in 1989, which that's a Mets card right there, when he managed the Class A Jackson Mets. In 1991, Swisher was the manager of the Tidewater Tides, which is circa that card right there. And he held the same position with Binghamton in 1992 and 93. He also spent single seasons as a manager of the Class AAA New Orleans Zephyrs in 97 and the AA Reading Phillies in 2005. He also was in Reading in 2004, but he had a accident, like he slipped in the dugout and he injured himself. So after the 2005 season, he basically was not returned to the dugout with the Phillies. After 2005, I'm not really sure what he did. I would assume that he was affiliated in baseball in some capacity to his official retirement, reaching the age of 65. One more thing that needs to be pointed out, as I mentioned a little bit earlier when I mentioned Steve Swisher, his son is former New York Yankees / Oakland Athletic, Nick Swisher. So if any of you enjoyed baseball in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, you definitely know who Nick Swisher is, as he was, part of the Yankees during their run for titles. So I'm very happy to add Mr. Swisher to the collection. He's one that I've never gotten before, and if you're a Cubs or a Cardinals fan, this is definitely one that you want to try to get. So moving on to the next one. This next individual has a very, very cool story. And as a matter of fact, Steve Swisher would have been his catcher, probably, on one of the teams that he was on. And I am talking about Pennsylvania native Tom Tellman on one, a second, 1985 Topps traded, a third, 84 Topps, which I have a bunch of those for some reason. I have an 86 Topps of him, which I've had that card for a long time, because I remember pulling that out of a pack as a kid. I'm like, man, that guy looks old. He's like 30 probably in that picture, but when you're a 8-year-old kid or whatever, or a 6-year-old kid, you think, man, that guy's got to be old. And finally, the biggest reason I wanted to write him was I got him to sign the triple player card of his rookie card, and I believe the 2 other gentlemen on there, Stymack and Stabeline, also signed through the mail, so I'd like to possibly get them to sign as well. So let me tell you about Tom Tellman and his amazing career getting to the major leagues. So normally I talk about players and I talk about how they played in high school. I talk about, they went to college. I just kind of gloss over that subject. Well, in an interview that Tom Tellman gave just last year in 2020, one of the things that he said was that the amazing part of his journey was he got cut from his freshman, sophomore, and junior baseball squads. This guy, who later would become a major leaguer for a couple different franchises, didn't even pitch in high school until his senior year. Well, he was impressed enough people to get an opportunity to pitch at UNLV and also Grand Canyon University in Arizona and Nevada, respectively. The Padres saw him pitch for Grand Canyon and decided to take a chance on him and selected him in the 11th round of the 1976 draft. Well, being he was an 11th round pick, obviously he didn't get a huge signing bonus, so he spent 4 years pitching in the Padres organization until he got that call-up in 1979 for 1 game. Well, that didn't go so well, as his ERA after that 1 appearance was 16.88. Well, going into the 1980 season, he returned to AAA. Well, he impressed the Padres so much, he went 13-5 in 24 starts for them, that they basically were forced to bring him up to the majors. Well, he only started 2 games for the Padres that year, but he appeared in 6 and he won 3 of those games and had a minuscule ERA of 1.61. Well, despite this awesome success in 1980, he again was sent to AAA. Well, that year he appeared in 25 games, starting 25 for them, and almost had a 500 record, going 12 wins and 11 losses, but his ERA was pretty good. Not a call-up at all in 1981. Well, in 1982, now at 28 years old, he still was in AAA for the Padres. This time they mainly used him as a reliever, and he went 7-7 with a 3.8 ERA. Still no call-up in 82. Well, after the 82 season, the Padres decided to trade him to the Milwaukee Brewers. Well, the Brewers didn't waste any time, and they put Tellman in their bullpen. And he responded his first year in Milwaukee with a 9-4 record with a minuscule 2.80 ERA and 44 relief appearances. The next year in 1984, he again returned to form, going 6-3 with a 2.78 ERA in 50 games for the Brewers. Despite the success in 1983 and 84, the Brewers did not offer Tellman a contract, which is just crazy. I mean, can you imagine letting somebody go as a free agent after they posted a 2.80 ERA and a 2.78 ERA in 2 seasons for you with winning records, and just saying, we're good, we don't need to re-sign you. So, with that news, he signed with the Oakland A's. The A's, unfortunately, I'm guessing this must have been an injury relation to why the Brewers didn't re-sign him, because his time in Oakland, he struggled, to say it nicely. He split time between both AAA and the majors that final year in 1985, and he just appeared in 11 games for the A's that season. After the 1985 season, Tom Tellman never played in the majors again. Well, after he retired, and I got this information for an interview that he did. Actually, it wasn't an interview. It was more like a luncheon, and somebody recorded it. And I'm going to post that down here because it's actually on YouTube along with the article. So definitely check that out. It's a 45-minute video. It's going to take a little while to watch. But anyways, if you listen to his career, he talks about all of the adversity that he had to go through to get to the major leagues, from high school all the way to when he got to the majors. And finally, the thing that he did was, after he quit as a player, he went back to his hometown and became a high school baseball coach. So he still was giving back to the high school that initially cut him 3 times when the journey began. So I'm very super excited to add Mr. Tellman to the collection. He is exactly why I do these videos. This is somebody that you just want to hear his story, because he went down the rocky path and was so determined to be a Major League Baseball player. He worked so hard and he found his dream. So hopefully we get the other 2 guys to sign that card. I want to thank Mr. Tellman. I want to thank Mr. Swisher as well for signing for me through the mail. I also want to thank longtime Met great Ron Hodges for signing as well through the mail for me. I want to thank you for taking the time to enjoy this episode with me. I really hope you enjoyed the Tom Tellman story. If so, definitely leave me some comments below, and as always, happy collecting.